Learning a Black Gemara. Today's daf is daf Ayin Aleph Amid Aleph. So we learned in the Mishnah that if somebody stole an item, or you got it, or you pay a penalty of double, and then you went ahead and you shechted it or you sold it, depending if it's a sheep or a cow or an ox, you pay 4 or 5 times. And then we said that if you did it on, and you decide to sell it to Avodah Zorah for Yom Kippur, and so on and so forth, you still have to pay everything. Also, it says if you stole it and shechted on Yom Kippur. Now, shechting Yom Kippur, you get kares. And kares, you don't say kam lemed rabbane. We don't say that we're going to drop the penalty, the monetary penalty, because you get kares. Even though we did learn in Ksubas of Nechunya ben Akona, the Flamed clearly says that by kares also we say kam lemed rabbane. Obviously, this Gemara here does not follow Nechunya ben Akona, and we follow the opinion of the Chachamim that say no. There's no common rabbin when it comes to kares. Only when a bezdin says Ashayashin Alakim, but a Alakim is a bezdin. A bezdin does not have the capacity to give two punishments. And we discussed yesterday a little bit more and understanding what exactly that means. But the problem is that you do get malchus. Rabbi Yitzchak says in the third period in Malchus that if someone deserves kares, you don't get malchus. But we hold if you get kares, you get malchus. And in fact, you know your history. There was a chief rabbi in Tzfas, his name was Rabbi Yaakov Beirav, who was the Rebbe of the Bes Yosef, and he was chief rabbi at the same time that Rizal was the Alshich was all these great Gedolei Yisrael, and he was the chief rabbi. So he gives you an idea who he was, and that was a Makam HaTorah. In fact, the Chassam Sofer writes a tshuva in the Reish Lamed. He writes a tshuva that he quotes one of the earlier Achronim that Tzfas is today the holiest city in Israel, and it surpasses Yerushalayim. And that is why the Gedolei Yisrael chose to learn in Tzfas, because that became a city of Kabbalah and so on. So he came up with the idea of reigniting reinstating the smicha, the real smicha that dates back to Moshe Rabbeinu, based on a Rambam that all Eden joined together. And the motivation behind that was that all these people in Spain, who had to swear their allegiances to Christianity and so on and so forth, and plus, as a result of that, the Goyim made them eat Tafkei Chametz on Pesach, eat on Yom Kippur. All of these Averos were Chayav Kares. So he said, since the halach is that you can get Malchus, and Malchus is a substitute for Kares, and Kares is the worst possible punishment, but you cannot give yourself Malchus. In order for the Malchus to have the credibility, or the legal standing of Malchus, we have to have a proper bezin, and it has to be in Israel. You can't do Knos and all that. And so therefore, he reconvened the Bezin and he invited all these people in the diaspora who escaped. Yeah, and they say lots of people, we don't know numbers, but lots of people went. The problem was that at the same time, there was the Baram Belchavi who was in Shalayim, and he was upset that they didn't consult him or they didn't even ask him his opinion, even though he was the big Talmud Chacham, he's the only one there. And he screamed, Kimitzi and Teitzei Seder. It has to come out of Yerushalayim. In other words, it seems that itself was the argument, whether Tzfas was the holiest city or Yerushalayim was the holiest city. So the idea is that by giving Malchus, it's a substitute for Kares, so that the problem was all these people, they felt, why do I have to be from? I already ate Chametz on Pesach, I already ate on Yom Kippur, even though it wasn't my fault. So what's the point? So therefore, he wanted to make sure that there is a point. And he said, well, we'll expunge those Avedas you did, especially, your Anusim. You didn't have a choice. In fact, that's what we call them. We call them Anusim.
Very shortly after the Inquisition.
They all, it was right after, but they all lived at that. Yeah. So that's exactly where it started. In fact, talking about 1492 is also the year that they discovered America. The Kotzke Rebbe writes, if I remember correctly, if you count 5,000, if you count 1492 in our calendars, Reish Nun Beis, hey, Allah for Reish Nun Beis. He says if you count 5,252 psukim from the beginning of Chumash, words of psukim. So words. If you count 5,252 words from the beginning of Bereshis, you will come to the pasuk in Dvarim Ki Yarchiv Hashem Azbucha, and he says that's referring to America, not Yerushalayim, Eretz Yisrael. We're talking about the Beis Hamikdash. It's referring to America, and he says America one day will be a Makam Torah that will be unparalleled in history. More yeshivas than ever were, more people going to yeshivas than ever in history before. This is said in the early 1800s, when America was not only a faith of Medina, nobody even knew America existed. And that's what he said. 1492. Kotzky Rebbe in Poland. Poland. Who in Poland knew about about America? They didn't have the game of risk in those days, so they didn't know anything. That was in late 1800s. But there was a Chassid Rebbe Marash who went to America. Sorry, a Chassid Rebbe Marash, his son went to America, and every day, his father wrote him a letter in Yiddish to make sure that he stays frum and everything else. They put it together in a sefer. I don't have it, but I saw the sefer. Fascinating letter, and you see how the style of the letters change. At first, he's talking about make sure you learn Samachlov and everything else, whatever memory. At the end, unfortunately, but the love of a father to a son is unbelievable. Every day wrote him a letter in Yiddish, and obviously the son got it, compiled it, they put it out in the sefer. Anyhow, let's continue to get out here. If Ayin Aleph, I'm at Aleph, 2 lines at the top. Gonav v'tovach b'Yom Kippur. Says the Gemara, Amri. Okay, but the question is, since you get malchus, why are you paying dal v'hei? Ain't like in Mishalman. Just like this common rabbin, you don't get killed and you pay. So too, you don't get the malchus and you pay. Is a mine? He dictol leko malchus miyakad. You get malchus. V'kaim like in Mishalman. You don't get a double punishment. Amri. So we answer, Hamani Rab Meir. This is Rab Meir, and Rab Meir holds that when it comes to malchus, we don't believe in the concept of in the principle of common rabbinate, and we will punish you both. But he says loike u'mishalem. You do punish both. You learn from Hashem, whatever loike and mishalem. Says the Gemara. And I may say that we're learning more Makkas, where he says about Adam Zaymin, who said that somebody else owes money, they get malchus for lying, Loisana, whatever, and they have to pay money cash zamam. And he says because Loy Hashem Hamavin Leder, because there's two different Isurim. So anyway, he doesn't believe in common rabbinate. Now we understand if you don't believe in common rabbinate, then what's the difference if it's malchus or what's the difference if it's misa? If ain't like in the mishalmin, nor do you get to know that you get killed and sorry, if you hold leikin umishalmin, so too you'll hold mesa mishalmin. So how come then I feel talk about Shabbos, even on Shabbos when you shechted and you get killed, capital punishment, but l'chayda it's he doesn't believe in kamle b'derabin. What's the difference? You tell me there is a difference. Leikin mishalm islay mesa mishalm leslie. Maybe there's a difference that when it comes to misa we'll say common rabbinate. When it comes to malchus we don't. Maybe others will hold that way, but not Rab Meir. Because Loi Nova, Tanya, we learned, Gonav v'tovach b'Shabbos, you stole and you shechted on Shabbos. The Gonav v'tovach l'avodah zarah, you shechted and stole, and you, which is Chayiv Misa. Yeah, it's all in tandem. Gonav shoyd haniskel, you stole a shoyd haniskel, which you're not allowed to have any hana from. The moment it was deemed to be a shoyd haniskel, you're not allowed to have a hana from it. V'tvach, and you shechted it. But what do we see from the first few cases of Rameir? What do we see from the Shabbos that he says that there's no kam lebe deravane when it comes at all, whether it's Misa, whether it's Malchus. So why is our Mishnah? It can't be Rameir. Our Mishnah Rameir. Why talk about Yom Kippur? Talk about Shabbos. Big chiddush. The Chachamim disagree. They say Paichi. The Chachamim hold that no kam deravane. Amri bar mina that he. So take this off the table. Maybe there is a difference between Misa and Malchus. What about this Bryce here that says we shechted on Shabbos? You get both punishments. It's a unique case. We're talking about here. So we learned Rabbi Yaakov said the name Rabbi Yechon. Others say Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Shimon Lakish. Rabbi Yirmiyah said Rabbi Shimon Lakish. Rabbi Ovin, Rabbi Loi, V'chol Chavaros of Rabbi Yechon. Rabbi Ovin, Rabbi Loi, and all his friends and said the name Rabbi Yechon. Amri, they said B'tavech al Yedei Achad. They all said the same thing, and that is that even though we have a rule, we'll see the Gemara, there's an exception when it comes to tvicha. That if you have a shliach going out there and shechting stolen goods, yes, shliach advar veda. So therefore, if the shliach goes ahead and shechts it on Shabbos, the shliach will get killed because he was machal Shabbos. But who has to pay the 4 or 5 times? The mishalech. So here's an instance where you can have both punishments. Nothing to do with common rabbinate. It's 2 different people. That's the point. Even though it's one ma'isa, the chiddush here is one act. It's one act, and that 2 punishments. Because it devolves on 2 people, we are going to punish them both. That's what Meir is saying here. When then the obvious question is, so why would Chacham argue then? Chacham would say Potter. Why Potter? We'll see in a minute. First, we have to establish Why ain't shlit varveda? Ready gemara v'chizeh but tevechadiach b'sur shlich. V'chizeh choyt is chai. Where do you find such a concept? One person sins and the other person has to pay. This guy, Amar Rabba Shani Hochem across says the pasuk Gutvachai Umechara. Here's unique that we say yesh shlich varveda because it says shechting or if you sell it. And ma mechila, the only way you can sell something is that two parties involved. So tvicha also could also be two parties involved. The Gemara brings two other sources for the same din, which is Rabbi Shmuel Tan. It says oi. So what's the oi coming to tell you? To be marba a shlich. And not everyone agrees to that because before, yesterday we learned a few days ago that oi we need that you shouldn't think you have to do both activities in order to be chayiv. But really, that always revolves around the machlekes of Yenis and Rabbi Yeshua. Whenever it says and, does it mean or? Does and necessarily mean and, or and can mean or? And Dveichizkitana tachas. It says, abo tachas this and that. Tachas, a substitute. What's a substitute? L'rabba l'shlich. Either you did it or your substitute. Your shlich did it. Bottom line is yesh shlich et varaveira in this case, and that's what the Bryce is talking about. Nothing to come with rabbinate. The person who did the shchita will be penalized accordingly. Will get capital punishment, and the mishalech pays the money. Nothing to come with rabbinate. First masker mazutra. We have a rule. The rule is that a shliach cannot do any more than the mishalech. And Mazut understood. What's the idea of Kama Daf? The idea of Kama Daf is that you don't get two punishments for one act. So if you did an act, we'll give you the certain punishment, and the lower punishment doesn't exist at all. There's no money. There's no money. There's no chiv of money here at all because we're giving you misa. So the question is, if the Mishalech himself would have shechten on Shabbos, he wouldn't have to pay because there's no chiv of mammon. So how can it be when he asks someone else to do it on his behalf, suddenly he has a chiv mammon? You cannot charge a Mishalech more via the shlich than the Mishalech himself would have done. What's a shlich? The shlich is an extension of Mishalech, but the Mishalech himself would have done it. Would he have had to pay the 4 or 5 times if he shechten on Shabbos? No. And his understanding was, what do you mean you have to pay? Because there's no chiv. Because you did a crime and you get only one punishment for every Maisa has only one punishment with it, and we're going to have to choose between these two punishments. Obviously, Misa will supersede the punishment of paying money. Okay, so how come when the Shlich does the same one Maisa, suddenly we say, oh, now we give 2 punishments? Masker Mazuta. Me immediately love it. He himself would have carried out the Shechtin on Shabbat. We wouldn't make him pay the 4 or 5 times. But if the Shlich does it, we're going to say, okay, now you have to pay. How can it be? Omer Ravashi, you misunderstood. You thought that Kamad Rabbi means that there is no chiv of mammon here at all. I'm telling you it's a pshat. Of course there's a chiv of mammon. But we're not going to give you 2 punishments. But the chiv of mammon is there. But where the second punishment can happen, for example, it's 2 different people. One person will get the misa, so there's room for the other person to pay the money. Then the punishment is there. Now, why Taka don't get the second punishment? There's 2 ways of understanding. One is because when included in the punishment of mitzvah, as if you also pay back the money, or we say that Bezin does not have the capacity to two punishments on one person, but here it's 2 different people, so therefore Bezin can make 2 punishments. Or here, because it's 2 different people, and the Mishalech is the one who did the tvicha, then even though that the misa includes the payment of mammon, but not in this case because there's another party involved. On the Rashi, not because you're not chayiv, the common of the Rabbanei. So therefore, the Mishalech pays the money. Even the so now more ask a simple question. So my time to Rabban the party. So why did the Rabban say, you tell me nothing will come with Rabban here? And the argument, and Rameh is talking about a case we had a shliach, and we just established that yes, shliach is varveira. So the shliach is going to get killed for shechting on Shabbos, and the Mishalech pays the money. If that's what we're talking about, my time to Rabban the party. So why is the Rabban patching it? Amri, so we say, man chachamim. We say, who is the Chachamim? Rab Shimon. Nothing to do with Rabbanei. Rab Shimon has this rule. You learn during Subis and learn other places that Shechita she'ein ru l'shem shechita. A Shechita which cannot, which has not been, what do you call it? Shechted animal is not and hasn't come to fruition, is not considered Shechita. Like Yishachta and turned out to be a treifa, it's called a shchita she'ein ruah, and therefore you don't pay the 4 or 5 times. You know why you don't pay 4 times? Because there's no shchita here. Yishachta has to be a proper shchita.
That's interesting. The pasuk doesn't use the word shchita.
It says tvachim. Yeah, but, okay, but we see tvachim doesn't mean butchery. It means in a way that it brings results. So Gemara said, "Bishlam avodah zarah shenisko shchit and ruya." Understand? Avodah zarah, you shechted for avodah zarah shchit, which isn't real. Or shchit hanisko as well. It's also about no. What's the point of shechting? Nobody's going to benefit from your shchita. Okay, I understand. Both of these instances are shchita shein ruya, and avodah zarah the same thing. Ela Shabbos. If you shechted on Shabbos, you commit an avodah, but the meat is kosher. You're allowed to eat it. So why does the Mishnah say that if you shechted on Shabbos, we say Shabbos chiduruyi? It's not we learned Hashaychi b'Shabbos Yipurim Avavision Chai Benafsh Chiduk Sheda. The shchit is kosher. It's kosher. Yeah. So how come we say that you don't that that you're pot from dalvei? Right. In this brayse it says that in the brayse it says clearly it says gonav v'tovach b'Shabbos. You're telling me it has nothing to do with kama b'drabin because it's through a shlich. And usually you have to pay dalvei. But the Chacham say you're potter. Why are you potter? Because the shchit is shein ruya. Why is shechting a Shabbos shchit and ruya? You can eat it. So the Gemara, Amri, I'll tell you, Sova, look at Rabbi Yechon Sandler, that Rabbi Shimon, with the Braise here, holds like Rabbi Yechon Sandler, that says that if you shecht on Shabbos, it's awesome. It's awesome to eat. And therefore, it's a shchita she'en ruya. What's Rabbi Yechon Sandler? And we learned this a few times as well, and we learned again a chulin. It's not, we learned, if somebody cooks on Shabbos, we have three opinions. And there are different opinions how to understand the three opinions. But we're just learning Rashi learns here. Hamavasel b'Shabbos. Somebody cooks on Shabbos b'Shabbos. You cook the Shabbos by mistake, for whatever reason. Then Yechel, everybody can eat on Shabbos, even the person who did it. Even because they're shaking. We're not in this case. We don't have to be goyzer. How can you allow him to eat it next time? Do it because we don't believe people will be directing Michal Shabbos. When it comes to a goy, people treat it lightly. We're very worried that if we allow you certain things, next time you'll take advantage of it. But when it comes to yourself being Michal Shabbos, we don't think people are going to be brazenly Michal Shabbos. But b'mezid, if he did it b'mezid, lo yib'yechol, nobody can eat it. So why does it say that he shouldn't eat it? Because that's the signal by what do you call it? Since we talked about b'shegig, we're saying that even he can eat it. So therefore, in the safer, we continue talking about him. But really, nobody can eat it on a Shabbos. But Motzei Shabbos, everybody can eat it. Rabbi Yehuda says b'shegig when it comes to shegig yeichel b'Motzei Shabbos. That what nobody can eat on Shabbos, but everybody can eat it after Shabbos. B'mezid lo yochel b'mezid, he can never eat it, but everybody else can. B'mezid we penalize him, so he can never benefit from what he did. But others who were not involved in this thing, okay, during Shabbos we don't have any benefit from, but afterwards it's much. Rabbi Yechon Sandler says b'shegig, if it's b'shegig, then yochel b'motzei Shabbos. Lachein lo he can never benefit from his activity. Others can eat his Motzei Shabbos. Oh, but b'mezid lo yochel lam is lo v'lo nobody can eat. So therefore, the Braise, that's why it's called a shchita she'en ruya, because nobody can eat from it. Says Gemara, my time, Rechon Sandler, what takas he holds us? The door is standing in the doorway of Venecia. It says in the pasuk, "Ushmartem es Shabbos." You should protect the Shabbos. Ki kodesh he lachem. Shabbos is holy to you. The day of Shabbos itself is holy, and we can bring it to kodesh. Ma kodesh also b'chilus like kachim. Nobody can eat it. Maaseh Shabbos asur b'chilus. He said that any aveda you do, it's a chefza. The chefza itself becomes asur. But the Gemara says, if you're going to compare it to kodesh, let's go a step further. Ima kodesh asur b'no. Not only you shouldn't be able to eat it, you shouldn't be able to sell it, you shouldn't be able to have any enough of it. Ap maaseh Shabbos asur b'no. It says in the very pasuk, ki kodesh he lochem. And we look in Psachim that Chav Beis, and whenever it says lachem, it means lachem that you can have hana from it. It's still yours. If it will be asur b'no, how is it yours? What can you do with it? By saying lachem to you means the object is still yours. So on the one hand, it's asur b'chila, on the other hand, it's mutzah b'no. So lachem yehei. Yochel, I would have thought that Philip b'shegig, that even if he did a b'shegig, also shouldn't be able to eat from it because kodesh, right? The day itself is what's a chefza. It says in the very pasuk that you should keep the Shabbos kodesh yulachem michaleleh ma'isumus. It says it that mechaleleh, that if you're mechal Shabbos, you will be put to death. So what are we talking about? B'shegig amazing, obviously amazing. Make about b'shegig. Please, what about Chavravin? Chadam, my Shabbos, I said one of them says the Bechon Sam holds b'hatoyde. You can't have any benefit. So it's mamash chiddush she'en ruya. But Chadam and Ma'aser Shabbos Rabbanim. And one of them says that it's only Asur with Rabbanim. That means Mahatoida, it's a shchita ruah. So the question goes back in the Brisa. According to one that says that even B'yechon Sandler holds, really it's a proper shchita. The Rabbanim just interdicted that you can't have any benefit from it. But Mahatoida is proper shchita. No, so you should be paying dal v'hei. The Rabbanim can't come and make it easy, life easy for you, but making it harder for you. So if the Torah says that it's a proper shchita, and therefore the shliach gets killed for what he did on Shabbos, and you're not a shliach, you pay dal v'hei. What are you telling me? But because B'yechon Sandler, we're going to take that away from you. The Rabbanim are going to, you're making it easy for him. Before we get to that, the one who says only Rabbanan, what about the pasuk Kodeshi? Forget, he learned Kodesh. The day is holy. He Kodesh, but things, that activities, no, it's not the chefza. It's like the gavra, the man's day. Okay, now we can ask the question I just said. The one who holds my Torah, I'm lucky therefore Rabbanan. Therefore Rabbanan say, what? It's not shchituruya. Elamandam the Rabbanan, the one who says that Mahatoyah is a proper shchita. It's only the Rabbanan. Am I Patra Rabbanan? Why Rabbanan Patra? Most you're right. When it says Chachamim Patra, they weren't referring to all three cases. They were only talking about two. Asha'ara and the other two. And Avodah Zarah, since you cannot have any benefits also Bahano when you shech Avodah Zarah, so it's not a proper shchita. We don't consider that shchita. And B'Sher HaNizko. Shor since you can't have any benefit, the same thing. So the mother of let's ask a question. Why are you chayiv? May doesn't hold a shchituruya. Okay, he holds that even if it's not a shchituruya, the fact that you went through the motions, you shechted it, you got to pay 4 or 5 times. So let me ask a question. So Meir, why are you chayiv shech avodah zarah? The chayiv, the chayiv, as soon as you begin, you nick the animal. You're standing by avodah zarah, and you start the shchita, it's already also b'hanah. So by the time, but when you chayiv for tzvicha mechira, when you complete the job, by the time you finish the tzvicha, it was no longer your animal. The moment that you started avodah zarah, the animal became also b'hanah, which means whose animals are now? Nobody's. So when I did the tzvicha part of it, it was nobody's animal, it was also b'hanah. So why am I paying 4 or 5 times to the owner? Who's the owner? Freddy Mother. Am I mechayiv shachavada? Keeping the shachavah as soon as you shecht a little bit, asra, either the entire animal came asra. Sorry, asra either chizarnahu below the marakatavach. So the rest of the animal, the rest is also b'hanah. So whose animal did you shecht? Nobody's. Amarava. So now suddenly we look how we take a brayso. It's such an open-ended brayso. Now we're limiting it to the following case, which is when does this happen? Omar of Rava says, you know what Amei says you have to pay the 4 or 5 times? Only in the following conditions. But Oimer, the guy said, I don't want it to be avodah zarah until I finish the job. I want to make sure I do a proper shchita for this avodah zarah. So then it happens in tandem. It's mutter b'hana until you finish, because it's not avodah zarah yet. And at the same time, you did your tvicha. And that's when we say, okay, so you shechted somebody's animal. Okay, we found the case. What about Niskel? Isuri hanoninu, shoyn haniskel the chasubano. So the when you shechted the animal, shoyn niskel lav the monikatavach. I mean, we discussed Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam holds that the shoyn niskel, as long as the animal is alive, it's still mutbano. Only becomes osbano after it's killed. So what's the Gemara saying over here? Well, I guess at the moment you start the shchita already, it's asabahano, and
once the basin is made, it's psak. But they haven't started yet.
The owner of the animal has to make sure that he brings it to the beis.
He's the one who has to bring the animal to the cliff where they stone at the road.
Whatever they do, yeah. You have to bring it to the base of beis.
They take.
Yeah, he has to give it to them. Not he does the skill. The beis has their executioner.
So I'm saying after they've made the psak, let's say they're on their way to the base of skiller, and the animal goes and goes somewhere. So then who would be more for you?
That's a good question.
So that's what I'm asking, because if here someone would go there and check it, is it shaykh to the Bailam Bichlal?
No, that's the question. The question is by Shor Niskel also no. It's not the moment the bezin handed down. That's the Gemara's question. So how can a may say you have if the guy comes along and shechts it, he has to pay dal bay to who? Also no. Yeah.
If that shur would now go and not go.
That's the interesting question. Who would be responsible if the bezin? It's an interesting question. Amar Rav says Rav. We're talking about a unique case.
It's a totally different show.
Oh, we said last time it's possible if it. No, we said last time if it ran away 3 times and the Edom came all at the same time to tell you about 3 different instances. Omar Rabba, we're talking about it here. Again, a unique case. The Balabas gave it to somebody to mind. The Hizig B'Beishayim, it caused damage while it was under that person's jurisdiction. The Huid B'Beishayim became a muad there. The Nigma Dinoi the Beishayim. And the bezin sentence is still sitting in the shayma's house. So we see that the shayid is not sitting in the bezin. So therefore, your question is the balabas is responsible until he brings it to the base of skila. So the balabas, and here the shayma is the one who's in charge. So what's that? So what? So the question, still a question. Still asabana. We'll apply 2 different dinim over here. But Ameir is sovel like Rabbi Yaakov. Ameir holds like Rabbi Yaakov and sovel like Rabbi Shimon. What are we talking about? So we learned Rabbi Yaakov said before that if I steal chametz from you, a bottle of whiskey, I can come to you, have to pay, say, here's the original bottle I stole. I has no value now. This is it. If the shomer can take the cow that became now a shomer hamud and go to the owner and say, here, here's the cow that I borrowed from you, that I minded for you. That's what Rabbi Yaakov says. So even though the animal is asabana, the shomer has benefit from the animal. Because he can use, if he loses the animal, pay money. So he can say to that guy, "Hey, take the animal back," and so on. But that is still no. We'll apply one more halacha. The Sabbath, you also have Shimon. Shimon says, "Davar hagoyim lemama kimamadami." Even though in itself has no value, but if this thing is missing, suddenly you have to cough up some money. Then davar hagoyim lemama, even though in itself inherently has no value, but it's goyim lemama is kimamadami. What's this Shimon? Now Shimon says, "Kotshim shechai b'chiyusim." If I said I'm going to take upon myself that I have kachim in my house. A guy came to my house and stole the kachim. If I took a responsibility that I'm going to make sure that this animal gets to the base of English, even though I can't have any benefit from this animal, but this animal is a goyim lemam, because now that I lost it, I got to buy a new animal. So therefore, even though this animal inherently has no value, but it's goyim lemam, it's kimamadami. So here also, the animal that's a muad, even though it's asabana, is a goyim lemam. That's why if a ganav comes in and shech, goyim lemam kimamadami. Kimamadami. Yeah. Case of the whole variance discussion. The maid is the one who holds in the gami. If I burn your contracts down, I have to pay money. So why do you have to deduce Rab Shimon Dover going to the moment? This guy came along, shechted my animal. This is garmi. He burnt my status. So Tesa wants to say there's a difference between garmi and going to the moment. Garmi is only when you destroy something that has value to the whole world. A check, a loan. He can sell it to anybody in the world, and everybody has it. Or the other case of Rameid is where I go ahead and I grow climb. I put grapes on your wheat. That wheat, anybody in the world could have used it, and now I ruined it for everybody. If I ruined it for everybody, that's called a garmi. Over here, in this case over here, the only one is between the balabas and the shomer. There's nobody else involved. So in this case, maybe there's no garmi. An interesting twist in garmi. That garmi is only where you affect a lot of people, not only you affect one person. Therefore, the Gemara has to use the rule of the davar hagoyim lemaman, not garmi. Okay, taking Gemara further. I said over this whole discussion for the Vigna me motzes mukbin mases and maybe the discussion came up. How can we say that this brayse follows a maybe like Rab Shimon? It says in this it says in the Mishnah. So how do you say this? So what are you saying? What do we start off? That our Mishnah is Rameir, and that's why on Yom Kippur, and that's why we say that even though Kippur l'chayr come with Rabban as well, Rameir holds that loikin umishalmi. So we said the author of our Mishnah is Rameir. So let me ask you a question. How can you say the Mishnah Rameir Tani say for Rab Shimon Poite B'Shnei Elu? Rab Shimon Patas where it's a shchita she'ein ruah, with it turned out to be trade, for example. It's not a positive. Nothing happened, so it's not a shchita. The fact that Rab Shimon only argues on these two, that means he agrees with the rest. But we know Rab Shimon agrees with Kamle Midrabbanei. So how can you tell me the author of our Mishnah is Rameir who said there's no Kamle Midrabbanei if you shecht on Yom Kippur? Because all it is lashes, and by lashes will give you two punishments, Malchus and Mammon. That's our Mishnah. But Rab Shimon is the end of our Mishnah. Rab Shimon also, Mikral the Kulmas is a Maida. Amalevi said no. Like everybody else, ain't like in the Mishalmi. Only Rab Meir says like in the Mishalmi. So who's also our Mishnah? The Mishnah can't be Rab Meir. Can't be that shot. We need to find another shot. And I told you there is another shot, and that is, and as Taisus explains it, another Rishonim, that because other Amoraim don't agree with talking about it, and he says, what happens? There was no hasra. What happened? There's no lashes on Yom Kippur. They didn't give you warning. We say, Kamad Ramne, even if it was an accident, even if you weren't warned, if he did a crime, that if you did it on purpose, with Chay Misa, Kamle B'Drabane. Chayav Misa Shegin, Tolu V'Chizke, Kamad Ramne. By Malchus, we don't have that same rule. So if there was no warning, if you didn't get Malchus, in other words, And we explained last time the difference is as follows. The husband in this says as follows. The reason why we don't give you malchus a moment is because the bezin cannot. Bezin only has capacity to give you one punishment. So therefore, we can only give you malchus. But if there's no malchus, there was no warnings, the bezin will punish you, administer other punishment, paying money. When it comes to misa, it's not because bezin doesn't have the power. The Torah took away the power. Torah says, "Come le b'drabbanan." We learn from us, whatever it is. My woman, if you miscarried, but if she would have died, you'd be potter from paying. The Torah says you're potter because either included in the punishment of misa is the payment as well. It's included in there, or the Torah says that you are potter from paying because you only get one punishment for an activity, and so on. And then Ton Bechizkin says that it makes no difference if you get the punishment or not. It's a different word.
The payment maybe is worse for him than the malchus.
We're having worse than Hedger, where the malchus is considered misa. But we actually had in Mark Subas that malchus is worse than misa. If they would have been, if they would have got malchus, they would have succumbed, and they would have bowed down. It's only because they were threatened with death and thrown into the fiery furnace. What we had, tzaddikim, chavivim aleim amayna yosim agufa. Some tzaddikim.
Maybe.
Okay, but after the Yamoli Nabdua Kharani Mishal Bazaya, they would have given in. In fact, I once heard read, I can remember. What's the point of that Gemara? So you're trying to say these great people that we all constantly, the ones who were after the human, if they would have been, they would have got, unless they didn't get Schmitz, they didn't get the, Malchus. Otherwise, they would have succumbed and done the Aveda. What was the point of saying that? So the Gemara is trying to say something else. The Gemara is trying to say a very positive thing here. No one ever gets challenges that you cannot overcome. Hanani, Mishael, Azariah were given a challenge. They were threatened to be killed because they knew they can overcome it. He did not give them the challenge of getting Malchus because he knew they couldn't overcome, so he wouldn't. So every person in life, they were aware of what either did. And the point is that every person in life, if you have challenges, you should know that you can overcome them. That's the point of the Gemara there. Positive. Amalei. The other two cases, it says if you shechted it, since the shchita is the proper shchita, even though my intention was not to eat from it, I wanted to give it to the dogs. I wanted to give it, for some kind of medicine to, like having more psach nachofeda, you put it on your arms or something, to take away wounds. Doesn't matter what your intention is. If you shechted it, proper shchita, that's called shchita ruah. Second one, we said in the Mishnah 2 cases. If you stole from your father and you shechted it, so now you have to pay, 4 or 5 times, and then your father passed away, so you have to split with your pay whatever it's your siblings their share. But if you stole from your father and your father died, and afterwards you shechted it, you pay nothing. Now the question is why shouldn't the siblings be entitled? What's the difference? What changed? Your father died. You shechted while your father was alive, or you shechted after your father died? What's the difference? Yeah, but so why don't siblings still? Why you only have a fifth? There are 5 children there. You're a fifth. So why?
It changed from the father's Rishus to the kids.
No, but the kids say, but Yerushalayim is different than anyway. Says the Gemara. What about Gan if somebody stole a shoy from 2 partners, and he shechted it, he shechted it, and he was mated to one of them. Mao. What's the thing? There were 2 partners. I went and I was mated to one of them, and I stole and shechted. And mated b'knas, you're potter. So I'm potter 50%. Do I pay 50% on the partner, or the Torah says, I pay all or nothing? This is why the Torah says chamisha baker. You have to pay 5 cattle. Not half. Makes no difference whole or half. There's such thing as all or nothing. No, it's exactly. No, exactly. There was the partners 50%. I paid 50% or whatever the loss was, whatever I should have paid. Because the other 50%, I'm potting. I was made it. It's all or nothing. Nothing is halfway. No half measures. Ace, said, that's a question. God says now Mishnah, God not Mishnah, he stole from his father, but he shechted while his father was alive, and then his father then died. So the din is he pays the siblings the other 4 or 5 times. Now he is one of the recipients. It's as if he's made it to himself. He doesn't have to pay himself. So therefore he's potted for himself. Why pay the other 4 or 5 times? You pay, it's all or nothing. Nobody, no,
Brothers, he pays 4 or 5 times. Brothers, no?
4/5. Let's say 5
Yeah,
brothers. He only pays their share. The ad, here, keeping the mace of him, since the father dies, just like he was made to one of them. And yet, brilliant question. Amalei said, Nachman said, the only way to understand why you have to pay 4 or 5 times if you're shechted by the father's alive is my skin. There's no haidah here. You already were in court. And the court already ruled that you have to pay. So even though afterwards he's made, after the father dies, he's made. So what do you do? Once the bezin, it's no longer a question of made the knas. It's now you have to pay money. So Rabbi then asked the question. So what happens if Yitaka didn't go to bezin? You tell me clearly that it makes no difference. Then even if even if you shechted when your father was alive, afterwards you don't have to pay anybody because you don't do it's all or nothing. And since you're made it to yourself, you don't have to pay your share. You don't pay anything. Yeah, in the Mishnah, so at the time, you say, so why does the Mishnah make a distinction? Gone off Mishnah, love your father, the mace, and your father died. Talk about himself. Even when even if you shechted while the father was alive, if your father took it in Torah, so then it's mama now you owe. Then after your father died, you pay, your brothers, whatever it is. If you did not go to Din Torah, therefore still in the realm of Knas, even though you shechted while your father was alive, and after your father died, then it's as if you made it to yourself, and therefore you put it on the rest. Make that distinction. And you don't know Chamisha. You're right. But I did not have Reisha gone to Mishnah. Since the Reisha highlighted the fact that he stole from your father, the Tovach Umochi Shechted, the Achekach Meisavi, is Nasiv Sefer Nami. He brings the same also. Gone to Mishnah Avi, the Meis Avi, the Achekach Mocher. And then that's why it talks about, when the father passed away. But you're right, you could have made the same distinction, Bezin, not while the father was alive, you shechted it, and then, whether you went to Bezin with your father or not. Now, this is interesting. With Safra, that was what Ramnach said at night. The following morning, I made a mistake. Chamisha Boker Amar Achmon Afil Chamisha Chatzi Boker. In other words, remember how many times we had in Shas already that the Rabbi had the Rabbi changed his mind. He kept on changing his mind. He learned from his Rebbe Nachman. And Nachman very emphatically said something. A Rabbi questioned him, and he answered back, with such a gusto. And in the morning he says, "You know what? You're right. 100%."
He's not afraid.
Well, look what he says here. You know why I didn't give you the right answer last night? I had to emphasize. You missed the Torah. I didn't eat my steak in the morning. I didn't have my breakfast. Sorry, last night I didn't have my flesh. So the Mefarshim say, if you try to find what's flesh of anything, they give all these kind of shetlach. But the Kudatayt it says that you need to get the gashmias to be able to come from higher shadish than ruchnias, and therefore the bish of the tater adle tam tam dogan. The child does not know how to say Abba because when you eat from gashmias, it brings out higher madregas, and therefore if I would have eaten properly, I would have been connected to Haim Adai, would have given the right answer. Oh, Raj says, time why not? We don't actually say why not. So some say, like Taste is right on top. Shorty B'tain say, why Taka didn't eat flesh? He was fasting. So the fasting made him not think straight. So I really don't do the flesh. That's just why I didn't eat. So I'm not sure why Taste says, I guess they're trying to work out. So what if you didn't eat flesh? So what? So that's he's trying to explain why he didn't get it right. Anyhow, we'll continue tomorrow night, 10:10 again. Shabbos was trying to get earlier. That isn't to that. Oh, sorry. Let's finish the two dots. So what is the difference now that Rab Nachman came along and said that what? That there's no such thing as all or nothing. That you pay. So why in the Reisha to say that if you shechted while your father's alive, then you have to pay to everybody else? And why in the Sefer if you shechted after your father died, you don't pay? What's the difference? But the Maisha Sefer, you could always say Maisha the Bezin because we don't say that anymore. So we don't care about all or nothing. Okay, so you're part for yourself. You got to pay your siblings. What's the difference before or after? On the Reisha Karina Baby Tvacha, a different issue altogether. It has to, when you shechted it, it had to be done at the wrong time. If this person shechted it after his father died, his own share he's allowed to shech. It's his. He has a fifth of that animal. So a fifth of that animal he did in the correct way. The other 4/5 he had no right to. That does not come under Vitzvachai. When are you liable the 4 or 5 times of Tvachai? The entire thing was done by Isra. In other words, you shechted when your father was still alive. You have no right to it. Yeah, that's your father's. So therefore, we say you have to pay 4 or 5 times. But if after your father passed away, you shechted it, so then you had a right to at least part of the animal, no longer with Tvachai. It wasn't all done in an illegal way. Good Shabbos, everyone. And tomorrow night, 10 past 10.